Yeah, I mean that's what makes this conversation so interesting to me. What you guys are doing is that it's not. It's very straightforward. It's a very straightforward thing that not nearly enough people think about, myself included. It's just not. It's just a blind. That's a blind spot. That's probably a poor choice of words, but it's just something that it's a filter again that we don't tend to look through the world through unless the world has put the filter on us. That we're lacking some sensory capability or mobility or something like that. So I think it's, and then once you crack that door, it's like, well, of course, right? Well, of course. So it's interesting to me. So you mentioned you have like 60 guidelines that I'm assuming that Audio Eye, you're saying, kind of espouse. Is that the first thing that you do when working with an organization, is sort of just assess everything? Or how do you help people once they've realized this is something they need to address? And maybe it'd be interesting to hear actually how you educate folks to having that breakthrough. And then how do they get started typically with you?
Yeah, so the 60 that I was mentioning actually are not unique to AudioEye. So I'll kind of backtrack there a little.
Great.
There's actually 86 what are called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and they're actually a global standard, which makes it nice in that it's not like different companies are, espousing different rules in order to create an accessible site. There's
Yeah.
just a globally accepted set of criteria that are pass or fail, right? Also very specific so that you can say this is an accessible link or
Yeah.
this isn't an accessible image, as an
The
example. So
definition of acceptable of good is set. So it's not
exactly.
subjective. It's not, yeah.
Yeah, so the way that you go about identifying them on your site, fixing them, maintaining it, that is different from company to company, but the actual guidelines themselves are pretty clear. That being said, you mentioned that I worked at Adobe a number of years before coming to AudioEye. Um, and I'm speaking in my focus group of one, not with the larger Adobe ecosystem, but in all the content I created, interactive experiences, of course, tons of PDFs, lots of video, um, you know, you name the content, we were creating it. Not once in that time did I think, is this accessible to somebody who's got a disability? Is this accessible to somebody who's using a screen reader? And it was largely because I didn't know. Nobody had talked to me about it. It's not something you learn in school. It's unfortunately
Yeah.
not something that a lot of marketers and business leaders have been thinking about. I think more and more you're hearing about it, but it just wasn't on my radar. And so, uh, like you said, as once I learned about it, the light bulb clicked almost immediately. It's like, oh, yeah, like this has been something I've just unintentionally ignored over the years, and unfortunately closed that digital door to potentially hundreds of thousands over the years of people who wanted to consume my content or accomplish whatever objective they had at that time. So it really all starts with, I think, a foundation of acknowledging what you don't know, which is where I was as I, came to learn about this, which is partly why I'm on this podcast, is to share, right, that awareness
Yeah.
with other marketers. It can be super overwhelming. It can seem really complex because, again, there's this long list of criteria. They're very detailed. They cross a number of uh, technological areas and realms. Again, that's just like understanding them, trying to then go and understand, all right, how do I shift my accessibility into my actual content creation process and my development
Right.
process also can seem overwhelming. So I like to tell people just start, right? Like, don't look at the whole world of accessibility and kind of think, I've got a ton of things going on at my organization, ton of priorities. Like, this is something that I probably should be thinking about, but I'll get to it next year. I think it can often always just be the deprioritized next thing to do. But the reality is, like, there's lots of tools out there to help you scan your site, as an example. I think that's the first step because one of the misperceptions we come across a lot with people is, oh, we have a really good team, they're doing alt text, they're doing that type of stuff. And so like we probably are pretty accessible. And most companies, when they do that first scan, are shocked to see that they've got hundreds of issues per
Yeah.
page, not per site, hundreds of issues per page. And again, it's because
Oh my
if
goodness.
you have an image that you use repeatedly and that one image
Yeah,
is wrong, then
everywhere
right,
that it shows up, right?
it
Yeah.
cascades exactly across your site. So really understanding where your site is today is the first step. And then I think just learning the best practices of creating accessible content. So many companies who are thinking about it are treating it as like a checkbox, a final step.
Hmm.
Have we created an accessible, web page here? And just with anything that if you're looking at it the second it's about to go out the door, it's
Yeah.
inaccessible. You pass the point unless you kind of go back and slow things down. So we really do also work with companies to shift their thinking left in terms of accessibility, and from the beginning, think about
Hmm.
building accessible experiences, accessible content, accessible digital products.